Did you already reading the book?
Not yet. I will finish on this week. Did you find any interesting matter on that book, Dewi?
So this book quite surprised me, Paul, considering the positive impact that globalization supposed to bring. But according to Stiglitz, this was the first step of this widespread of globalization. Actually, it was too good to be true. Along with the globalization comes myriad concern and problem.
Oh, really? Can you elaborate more on the concern that you can find just mentioned now?
The first concern being that the rule governing globalization favors developed countries, while the developing countries sink ever lower. The second, globalization only regards monetary value of items rather than other factors involved, one being the environment. So the next concern is how developing countries are controlled by globalization and negative effect it can have on their democracies. Developing countries borrow a large amount of funds from other countries and the World Bank, which essentially causes them to give up the benefit of their democracy because of the strings attached to the loan repayment. The fourth concern regarding globalization is the notation that it does not live up to its original expectation. Globalization was advertised to boost countries economically. However, it has not shown improvement in the developed or nor developing countries. Last but not least, the new system of globalization has basically forced a new economic system on developing countries. This new economic system is seen as the Americanization of their policies as well as culture. This has caused quite a bit resentment and financial damage.
Yeah, I have read on this book. Stiglitz highlight that individual persons and whole countries are being victimized by globalization. Globalization has succeeded in unifying people from around the world against globalization. Factory workers in the United States saw their job being threatened by competition from China. Farmers saw their job being threatened by in developing countries saw their job being threatened by the highly subsidized corn and other crops from the United States. Workers in Europe saw hard fought for job protection being assailed in the name of globalization. AIDS activists saw a new trade agreement raising the prices of drugs to level that were unaffordable in much of the world. Environment felt that globalization undermined their decade-long struggle to establish regulation to preserve our natural heritage. Those who wanted to protect and develop their own cultural heritage saw to the instruction of globalization.
Hi, Pak Dewi. I already finished my chapter for the globalization book. I can share it to you both. Yeah, according to the book, actually the globalization is already been for years, and then it's promised to improve the lives of the people in the developing countries, also in the emerging countries. Hence, in the emerging countries, they sometimes protest to the developing country because the globalization itself, not the concept is wrong, but how they manage the globalization itself. So it's kind of like a not full system of the globalization that people understand yet.
So what's wrong with the globalization? One, the rich nation have set the rules in their favor so much that the poorer nation may be worse than they were before the globalization. Also, the globalization promotes material value over the environmental or the human concern and has undermined the democracy in some cases. The second, globalization has negative effect on the developing and developed countries. For example, Western practice have led the hostility in some culture.
Hey, Pasates text me. Actually, already inside the room. So let's go there and then meet him inside.
Okay, cool. Let's go. Hi, Pasates.
Hi, Pasates.
Hi.
Hi, Pak. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Sorry, I could not join you there. I'm still busy with my thesis proposal.
Oh, you started the thesis already? Wow, it's very nice of you. So, how's the book, Pasates? Have you read all the book of the globalization?
Yes, Parendra, I already finished reading the book. I love the idea of the reforms that Stiglitz suggested. In 2006, more than 2.5 billion people were living on less than $2 a day. Since 1981, this number has increased by 36%.
Wow, increasing, yeah?
Yeah, it has not reduced basically. So to make globalization work, there are 6 areas that need to be reformed. This includes poverty reduction as well as the better trade policies. Yeah, the 6 areas that author mentioned that need to be improved to make the globalization work. The first one is the pervasiveness of poverty. So in September 2000, some 150 heads of the state or government attended the Millennium Summit at United Nations in New York and signed the Millennium Development Goals, pledging to cut the poverty by half by 2015. The second area is the need for the foreign assistance and debt relief. Many developing countries face a huge burden of debt. In some, half or even more than half of their government spending or foreign exchange earning from the export have to be used to service this debt. The assistance needed include the debt relief for the poor countries. The next area is the aspiration to make trade fair. The poorest countries had actually been made worse off by the last trade agreement, and the world responded at Doha in November 2001. There was an agreement that the next round of trade negotiation should focus on the needs of developing countries. The fourth area is the limitations of liberalization. So in the 1990s, when the policies of liberalization failed to produce the promised results, the focus was on what the developing countries had failed to do. The fifth area is protecting the environment. So global warming has become a true challenge of globalization. The success of development, especially in India and China, have provided those countries with the economic wherewithal to increase energy usage. But the world's environment simply cannot sustain the increased emissions. And the last one is the flawed system of global governance. There is growing consensus both that there is a problem of governance in the international public institutions like International Monetary Fund that shape globalization, and that these problems contribute to their failures. At the very least, the democratic deficit in their governance has contributed to their lack of legitimacy, which has undermined their efficacy, especially when they speak on issues of democratic governance. Okay, that's all from my side.
Okay, let's go to library. We
Right.
will explore more, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey Juve, I thought you are in Batam.
Hello, I just arrived last night.
Oh, okay. So we can finish our globalization book, yeah?
Okay. Yes, sure. By the way, I have the book here.
Oh yeah?
Here's the book. Okay. So, globalization has had a different effect on various developing countries. East Asian countries, among them China and Vietnam, have benefited from globalization in many ways, including economic growth that was almost 6% per year for the last 30 years. However, they also learned some lessons from this experience. They believe that market fundamentalism is one of the failures of globalization because it led to speculation and recession in 1997, when these countries opened their markets to volatile overseas capital flows. The author focuses on the limitations of liberalization, briefly to say the results never live up to the expectations. The developing countries were not able to follow through because their economic and political systems simply could not cope with the pressures. Finally, the author also argues that protecting the environment is one of the most important issues and countries must work together to lessen the effects of global warming. Successful development in countries such as India and China has only increased energy usage and also the use of natural resources. People from all over the world must adjust their lifestyle in order to reverse the effects of global warming.
So let's make a summary for this book. From my point of view, enhancing our understanding of globalization problem will help us to formulate remedies, like for small, for the some large, and for both providing symptomatic relief and addressing the underlying causes. How about you, Bu Poppy?
There's a broad array of the policy that can benefit to the people in both developing and developed countries, thereby providing globalization with the popular legitimacy that it currently lacks.
So in other words, globalization can be changed indeed. It's clear that it will change. The question is whether it will change will be forced upon us by crisis or the result of careful democratic deliberation and debate.
So let me add a little bit. The crisis-driven change risks producing a backlash against globalization or a haphazard reshaping of it, thus merely setting the stage for more problems later on. How about you, Pak Satesh? What do you think?
Okay, continuing from Pa Jue. So by contrast, taking control of the process holds the possibility of remaking globalization so that it at least lives up to its potential and promise of higher living standards for everyone in the world.
Okay, to finish, thank you for all and let's go to the class.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Okay, let's go to library. Okay, sorry. Cut dulu. Fine, just mention now. Salah kalimatnya berantakan.
From my point of view, Pak, sorry, it's very
The rules governing
East Asian countries, among them China and Vietnam, have benefited.
cut.